They were supposed to explain that.
Yes, please, Arlo.
Okay, there were supposed to be credits on the screen saying wacky musical intro from our friends from Frolics 8. It's performance art from Kevin Pope and some stuff I remixed. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's Arlo Pignati.
Oh, yeah. All right, there it is. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, folks, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. The show is brought to you by Atheist Community of Austin. My name is Ray Blevins. My co-host, Jeff D.
Hi,
and
folks.
this week's guest is Atheist Community of Austin. Here we go.
Some of it.
Yes, I
Can
thought
we
the camera
get a camera?
I thought we'd get the camera on.
Camera one.
There
we go.
Right.
This is a small sample of Atheist Community of Austin. As you can see, it's a family group, and I'm glad to see the kids out today. Thank you. We always start off the show with announcements. I want to remind everyone, this is coming to you live. It is Father's Day, June 21st. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers and all the atheist fathers. If any of the atheist fathers love to call in and comment, we'd love to hear from you.
June 20th.
20th. I said 21st.
That would be tomorrow.
That would be the solstice.
You were
Oh, tomorrow is actually the solstice? That's why.
Yeah. Tomorrow,
You're thinking solstice.
the 21st is the summer solstice, is where I got the confusion. And that's the reason we try to do quarterly. We try to bring in Atheist Community of Austin on a quarterly basis. And that coincides with the winter solstice and the summer solstice and the spring and fall equinox. But like I said, I always start off with announcements of the group. Atheist Community of Austin meets every Sunday, 10:30 down at the Hot Jumbo Bakery, which is down West 5th and Lavaca. It's free and open to the public. And we want to announce that that we will not be live July 4th.
Right.
That will be a tape show. So our regular viewers want to know that in advance there. We also want to announce this is the first day of the ethical education classes. It's a joint activity from Atheist Community of Austin and the Ethical Culture Society here. I think it's the full name, isn't it? And that's going on at Red Lion Inn here in Austin. And if you want more information, you can call Atheist Community of Austin at 371-2911.
Or check the Ethical Culture website.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
On
Ethical Culture has their own website, which is Ethical Culture Fellowship of Austin. There.
The Ethical Cultural Fellowship of Austin. Just put those words into your browser, it'll come right to it.
Thank you. The other thing we'd like to remind any of the high school seniors out there that are college bound, there is a Rosamond M. Austin Memorial Award for Austin, Texas high school seniors. What they're asking for is a essay, should be 3 or 4 type pages. The topic is rejecting religion. And this is a award set up by her son, and it's $1,000 first prize, $500 second prize, $250 third prize. If you want any more information or the address, you can go to our webpage at www.atheist-community.org.
It's a little hard to find this information on our website, though. You might want to give them the Freedom from Religion Foundation website, because they can go straight to it at that address.
And then Jeff's pointing out that the FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation, and their webpage is www.ffrf.org, and you can get more information that way. It's been you informed me what an eventful week we've had.
It's been a nutty week,
yes,
for religious news.
So let's go do some the news that hit this week, and
Okay.
we'll be getting comments from the callers and our guest today.
Mysterious sounds happening in the studio.
It's not me.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, there was so much news. I actually had to drop things that I'd kind of like to have talked about in order to get this down to 5 pages. So I'll be as quick as I can.
5 pages.
Southern Baptists overwhelmingly voted to rebuke President Clinton for proclaiming June Gay and Lesbian Pride Month. Oh, which reminds me, happy Gay and Lesbian Pride Month. And passed resolutions on issues from human embryo research to Kosovo. We're not going to allow the president especially since he is a Southern Baptist, to say that homosexuality is good, said the Reverend Willie Drake of Buena Park, California. What does he mean by allow? I mean, they obviously can't stop him from saying it. He already has, and they'd be violating his right of free speech if they could stop him from saying it. The resolution also called on Clinton to rescind his appointment of James Hormel, who is gay, as ambassador to Luxembourg. But isn't Luxembourg like one of the tiniest nations on the planet? I mean, how petty can these guys get? On the final day of a 2-day annual convention, members of the nation's largest Protestant denomination also approved a resolution urging Congress, NATO, and the United Nations to halt genocide and ethnic cleansing in Kosovo. So they're calling on Congress, NATO, and the UN to do something they've already been doing for over 2 months. That was nice. They also voiced opposition to a study published by the American Psychological Association that concluded that the long-term effects of child sexual abuse are not as serious as many believed. But look, I have no idea whether this study is valid or not, but the way to show that it's not valid is to expose its actual flaws. You don't prove a study is flawed by having a convention and voting to say you don't like it. They also called upon Congress to maintain the ban on the use of tax dollars for research that requires the destruction of human embryos. Boy, are these guys desperate to get credit for something. First it's, hey, NATO, we demand that you keep on doing what you're already doing. And then it's Congress, hey, you keep on doing what you're already doing. But I guess that's understandable, given that the rest of their resolutions are so ridiculously toothless. On education, the Southern Baptists encouraged members to support policies that allow religious instruction in private schools, and they commended in public schools, and they commended public school employees who offer Christian testimony. In other words, they encourage and commend violating the Constitution. What a fine bunch of Americans. Another motion asking that Clinton's home church, Emmanuel Baptist Church in Little Rock, Arkansas, discipline him for supporting Gay and Lesbian Pride Month was ruled out of order Tuesday because it violated convention rules. I see. They can't tell their own churches what to do, but they think they can tell NATO, the UN, Congress, and the President of the United States what to do. And they think they can make a scientific study untrue merely by objecting to it. No wonder they come across as such a bunch of hypocritical busybodies. Yeah, right?
I like the idea that this little church in Arkansas is going to discipline the President of the United States.
I don't.
And, I had no idea that church had the authority or the power.
Well, they don't. They just act like they do, and that's what
amazing.
makes them look so
We
silly.
understand that President Clinton knows about us because he subscribes to Faith and Firepower.
That was perfect, Arlo. That was perfect.
Of the 16 million members of the denomination, an estimated 11,000 were in Atlanta for the group's annual convention. And I saw a flock of them show up on CNN on Talkback Live, where the guest host welcomed them by saying, "Praise the Lord." During the Talkback Live show on gun control versus religious instruction in schools, and I thought that was nicely unbiased. In the next decade, Southern Baptists hope to start 1 to 4 flagship churches in 17 cities, said the Reverend Phil Roberts of the convention's North American Mission Board. Chicago, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Boston, Philadelphia, and Seattle will be targeted over the next 3 years, but there are a lot more to that 17. I'm not sure what other cities they're talking about. I think they've already got one here in Austin, right? The emphasis on urban recruiting marks a dramatic shift for a denomination whose 16 million members live mostly in small towns, suburbs, and rural areas. And you know, until recently I would have laughed at this. City folk have been historically too educated to fall for this fundamentalist malarkey, but recent events in the House of Representatives have made me less sure about that. Despite his call for more diversity in church membership, Patterson made clear that he does not believe that it should be accomplished with modern methods of preaching. He railed against pastors who replace the literal words of the Bible with creative interpretations. He said Southern Baptists should be moved by the Bible. Quote, "For most Baptists, it's settled forever. We believe every syllable of the Word of God to be absolutely true," he said. Well, there's their problem.
In fact, I love Christianity, for I am a Christian.
Thank you, Arlo. Judge to dismiss suit about Davidians split. Waco. A judge says he will dismiss a lawsuit over the use of the Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association's name and ownership of 77 acres near Waco. A man who claims to be the divinely appointed leader of the religious group had filed the lawsuit in an attempt to secure the land and block followers of David Koresh from using the group's name. Judge Alan Mayfield said he decided during a pretrial hearing against allowing his 74th State District Court to become involved. Mayfield said his court has no jurisdiction to determine matters of theology, church doctrine, and religious beliefs. Quote, I don't believe a jury could approach these issues without invading the First Amendment rights of the parties, period, Mayfield said this week. This is an excellent example of the state refraining from involving itself in religious affairs. Now, if only religion would reciprocate by staying out of state affairs, the way our founding fathers intended, everything would be just peachy. House continues juvenile justice debate, approves Ten Commandments provision. The House of Representatives resumed debate Thursday on amendments to curb youth violence, approving a controversial amendment to allow the Ten Commandments to be posted in schools and other government buildings. By 248 to 180, the House agreed to an amendment sponsored by Representative Aderholt of Alabama, which would allow schools and other government buildings in states that permit the practice to display the Ten Commandments. Even though the Supreme Court in 1980 struck down a Kentucky law requiring the posting of a copy of the Ten Commandments in each public school classroom as unconstitutional, members who pushed for the measure feel it will help promote morality in schools. Republican Representative Bob Barr of Georgia recently suggested that the Ten Commandments, had the Ten Commandments been posted at Columbine High School in Littleton, the school shootings, which killed 15, would never have happened. What is with this nitwit?
I was going to say, we recognize that name.
It seems like every time I turn around, he's making a fool of himself. First, he got caught giving a speech to a white supremacist group in Georgia. Then he was lambasting the army for allowing Wiccans equal right to practice their religions. And now this. Like Don said last week, we need to thank Bob Barr for making his brand of right-wing fundamentalist Christianity look so bad in the press.
I had a question.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I doubt
Sure.
if you're a constitutional expert or whatever. So the odds are it seems like that would actually be ruled unconstitutional.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, depending on how it's actually phrased, and I don't have the specific wording, if they merely say it's okay, it's technically always been okay to have the Ten Commandments in schools, but what you can't do is present it as, like, these are the rules of how to behave like a good person because the government has picked Christianity to be the religion that tells us how to do that, right? So.
And we have a question from the group there, David.
Well, actually, what they've said is religion has to be neutral in schools. You can talk about religion, but
Right.
you can't teach religion.
Right.
Now, as long as they display the Ten Commandments, the Code of Hammurabi, discuss the rules of various other ethical groups and societies, it will be okay. But if you turn around and say, well, we're going to put the Christian one. Well, which Christian one? The Jewish, the Catholic, or the Protestant? The Jewish have idols, the Catholics don't, and the Protestants do.
Yeah.
And then which one's the state going to choose?
Right.
Yeah, it runs into all kinds of problems.
It depends what they do with those commandments. I mean, if there was a historical textbook about, the things that people believed, and they talked about the Ten Commandments in there and even showed a tablet with the Ten Commandments on it, as long as they're not saying, this is true because Christianity says it's true and we've picked Christianity to be the religion that tells everybody how to live, that's fine. I mean, we already do that with all other religions. I mean, you can go in there and study about the ancient Mayans and find out about their religious practices, and there's nothing wrong with that because the state is not saying, hey, everybody, drop everything and start practicing the religion of the ancient Mayas. Should I continue?
Yes, please. I'm sorry, but I'm glad to get...
No, that was an important question.
Yeah, and then just remind everyone, this is June 20th. We'll take your phone calls live on the air. That is the
no
number.
calls yet.
And,
That must be fascinating, everyone.
Yes.
Presidential candidates had a broad range of reaction to the Ten Commandments amendment. Democratic presidential candidate Bill Bradley believes the legislative amendment passed by the House allowing the posting of the Ten Commandments in schools may be unconstitutional. It will have to be tested in the courts, Bradley said. My hunch is it's unlikely to pass constitutional muster. Well, given the Supreme Court's prior decisions about this, that's a pretty safe hunch. Vice President Al Gore said, it's a lot easier to child-proof a gun than to bulletproof a child. And that was nicely evasive. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Texas Governor George W. Bush, the GOP frontrunner, said states and localities should have the authority to make their own decisions about their own schools, said spokeswoman Mindy Turner. I'm sorry, an unconstitutional practice doesn't become constitutional just because individual states decide to do it. And am I the only one to notice that Shrub hardly ever speaks for himself? It seems like every time that there's a comment from him, it's his spokesman said that he said.
I hadn't realized that.
I noticed that, his dad's catchphrase was read my lips. Maybe his catchphrase is see if you can see my lips moving. GOP candidate Gary Bauer took partial credit for the measure, saying the amendment is, quote, a bill I helped draft, unquote. Oh, there's a big surprise. Gary Bauer is like a guy from the Family Research Council or some other crazy right-wing Christian thing. Quote, I believe if more American children read the Ten Commandments and are taught what they mean, they will predictably engage in less crime, he said, noting the sentiment for religion in schools after the recent student massacre in Colorado. But an increased sentiment for religion after the fact doesn't prove that more religion before the fact would have helped. To prove that, you'd need to show a statistical correlation between religion and crime reduction. Unfortunately for Mr. Bauer, no such correlation exists. In fact, since there's a higher percentage of Christians in jail than there are in the general public, and since cities like Dallas, which have the highest number of churches per capita, also have some of the highest crime rates in the country, one might reasonably draw exactly the opposite conclusion. I went to Littleton, Colorado, Bauer said. What you see are little handmade signs everywhere. Let our children pray and bring religion back into the schools. I think there's something stirring out there. Oh, yeah, there certainly is, and I just hope that our country can survive it. Another GOP candidate, Steve Forbes, called the House's approval of displaying the Ten Commandments a positive thing. The Ten Commandments we need to understand and adhere to. The more we see them, the better off we'll be. Well, maybe he's right, and I'm prepared to go into the subject of the Ten Commandments now, if you want to break the news and do that. I'm
sure.
Down to the last couple of pages here, but I think we really ought to take a good hard look at the Ten Commandments, because I think he might be right. I think the more we understand about them, the better off we might be.
And that's a great idea, because there's several versions in the Bible, right? And
there are. Yeah, let me get to my notes.
Okay.
I actually read that darn book over the weekend too, over last week too, so that I have my commandments straight. There are way more than 10 commandments, because there are at least 3 pretty distinct sets of 10 commandments in the Bible, and they don't all agree. The most popular ones, the ones that are always waving around, are the first instance in Exodus 20. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Well, right away we get into the problem with posting these in public schools. The federal government can give children advice on how to be a good person, but if the advice they give is you have to be either a Christian or a Jew, they are violating the separation of church and state. Our government cannot be in the business of telling little Hindu students that they're following the wrong religion, or little atheist students that they have to have a religion in order to be a good person. Number 2, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image of what's on heaven or on earth or in the sea. Actually, the way that commandment is phrased, it's not limited to gods. All representational sculpture is prohibited by a strict interpretation of that one. But even if you interpret it only as applying to religious images, it would violate the rights of Buddhists, Hindus, and other perfectly reasonable American religionists whose little children do not need to go to school and be told that, because their temple has a Buddha in it, that they are an evil person. And of course, many Christians break this one all the time with their sculptures of Jesus and Mary and angels.
At the elementary school I work at, there's little cutout of angels all over the hallways.
Yeah. Already they're violating their own Ten Commandments. The most popular version of it that they think are the ones that ought to be posted in schools. They violate it all the time. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. I'm sorry, this curtails free speech. If there may be reasonable rules about swearing in public or in inappropriate situations in front of children, but simply referring to some religion's God is not one of those things that that ought to be stopped, in my opinion, and in the Supreme Court's opinion. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. the Sabbath is Saturday, not Sunday, and isn't a holy day for for non-Christians in any case. The Christians have changed it to Sunday, but why should a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Raelian or a Wiccan pick any one day of the week, whatever the Christians think the Sabbath is, and treat it as holy? That violates their religious rights. If backed by our federal government, this would violate the rights of American non-Jews. I just said that. Honor thy father and thy mother. Well, now we've finally gotten into the part of the Ten Commandments which might have some value as guidelines on how to live. I'm really concerned that we don't have calls now, because I know I'm annoying people out there. Call in, please. We just want to see those lights light up. So 4 of the 10 Commandments really have nothing to do with how to be a good person. They only have to do with being a good Jew. Honor thy father and thy mother has some merit, but is vague about what form this honoring should take and how universally it ought to be applied. What about children who have abusive parents? Are they supposed to honor them? Thou shalt not kill. This, I should point out, first off, is not unique to Christianity. The killing is universally looked down on. I mean, in the sense that the Christians look down on it. I mean, not in the sense that you don't have wars, because everybody does that, including Christians. But in the general sense, everybody on the planet agrees to this. It has nothing to do with Christianity. It does not take some divine entity to come down from heaven and tell us that this is bad. Everybody's already figured it out. And obviously, you can't have a strict literal interpretation of this, because we do consider some killing justified in our society. Whether we should or not, we do. And some Christians argue that the word ought to be murder, but in fact that is not borne out by the original language. Number 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. Also not unique to Christianity. This is reasonable advice, but hardly more important than rape, against which there is no commandment. Adultery is bad when it is a violation of an agreement between 2 adults, or when it results in a disruption in the lives of children, but to the extent that it limits personal consensual activities between responsible consenting adults, it curtails their rights, and the government ought not be in the business of telling them what they can do.
And also, it goes through, your religion would define what adultery is. Some religions, multiple wives.
Got one.
Some religions, multiple wives.
There you go.
Are not against the law, and some people would consider that adultery if you had more than one wife.
Yep. And in fact, our government has already acted on that in violation of the separation of church and state. I mean, it is illegal in the United States to have more than one wife, even though there are some religions out there that think that's perfectly okay. 8, thou shalt not steal. Also not unique to Christianity. Reasonable advice, but obviously in our culture we consider some thefts justified. Otherwise we wouldn't consider Robin Hood a hero. 9, thou shalt not bear false witness. Not unique to Christianity. And as with killing and stealing, we do consider lying justifiable in some cases. 10, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's housewife, manservant, maidservant, ox, ass, etc. That's nice if we want to have our government become thought police and tell people what they can think. Even if it's a good idea to try not to have a desire for other people's stuff, you can't go around passing laws or telling little children that if they do have those feelings, they're evil. And I should point out that this treats women like property, and the previous commandment against stealing ought to cover all of the practical applications of this. But then, according to the Bible, Moses came down from the mountain and saw the people engaging in worshiping of a golden calf, and he got mad and he dropped and broke these original tablets. So he had to go back for a second set. And the funny thing is, the second set, after God says, I'm going to make you a copy just like the original ones, it's different. This is the next set of 10 Commandments. Check this out. This is in Exodus 34, 14 through 26, for those of you following along in your Bibles at home. 1, thou shalt not worship other gods. Cool so far. 2, thou shalt make no molten images. Okay, it's molten this time instead of graven. Close enough. 3, the feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep. Well, that's completely different. There's no mention of that in the first set. Has God forgotten in the space of a few days what he said were the ultimate laws of behavior just before? 4, 6 days shalt thou work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. Okay, this is the same as the previous set, but I would point out that that we're violating this now that we have a 5-day work week.
And I'd think it's a stretch of the imagination because rest and make the Sabbath holy. To me,
okay, that's true. It's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
Good point. 5, thou shalt observe the Feast of Weeks. I don't even know what that is, but it's different from the other commandments, from the previous ones, the ones Christians are always waving around as the 10 Commandments. Are we to tell little children in their schools that they should observe the Feast of Weeks?
Well, that will stop them from shooting each other, of course.
At least once a week. Let's see. Thrice in the year shall all your men children appear before the Lord God. I'm not sure what that means either, but once again, it's a Jewish law that has nothing to do with being a good person, and it has nothing to do with the set of 10 Commandments that Christians are always waving around as the 10 Commandments. Though frankly, I think it might be a good move for Christians to only take their little boys to church 3 times a year. 7, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven. Another Jewish law, this one a dietary law that, I guess maybe not, but has nothing to do with the 10 Commandments that they're always waving around, and makes no sense to post this in schools. 8, neither shall the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover be left until morning. Okay, fine. Not in the original set. 9, the first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring unto the house of the Lord thy God. More Jewish law, not in the 10 Commandments that the Christians are always waving around. And 10, thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. Jewish dietary law, not in the set of the set of 10 Commandments the Christians are always talking about. The set that when Moses brought him down, he got mad and broke them before anybody else took a look at them. Those were the ones that were supposed to have been written by the finger of God. This set, if you read, my reading of the Bible is that for some reason Moses wrote these ones down himself instead of God's finger doing it, and these are the ones which, interestingly enough, happen to be the ones that he actually managed to bring down from the mountain and show to people. And even more interesting, these are the ones the Bible calls the 10 Commandments. God, after he's done reciting these, said, these are my 10 Commandments. He never says that about the first set, even though there are 10 of them, and they're clearly laws. In between these 2 sets of 10 Commandments, there are huge, vast numbers of pages of other miscellaneous Jewish laws going into detail, some of which seem to have something to do with the first set of 10 Commandments, some of which seem to have to do with elaborations on the second set of 10 Commandments. I would also point out that homicide, theft, and perjury are permitted by the second set of 10 Commandments, the ones that actually got brought down from the mountain and shown to other people.
Interesting.
So all this nonsense about posting the 10 Commandments, which ones?
All right, we have several callers, but Sue had... No, I'm sorry. And let's try the phones and make sure they're working all right.
Okay.
And I see Mary on the line. Let's see. Mary?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary.
Happy Sunday and Father's Day and all that.
Thank you.
The first thing I have to say is that group of atheists over there certainly is shining with the beauty of intelligence this Sunday morning.
Thank you, Mary. Yes.
It's good to have you in Austin, all of you. The second thing I wanted to talk about is sometimes it's like harmonic convergence when you start off, Jeff, for me, because I have a friend who's dying of AIDS. I'm kind of scared to even say it out loud, in Hillsboro, and I've been thinking a lot about what being human is, and some humans are gay, and that's...
And this is their month, yeehaw!
Hey, but it like really powerfully reinforces every time I learn something every day. I try to do it, learn something different. It more powerfully reinforces my rejection of the whole thing about religion, like all of them. Okay?
Well, don't just take our word for it. Go look it up yourself.
Listen, no. I don't have to because this is famous. This reinforcement. The thing about the way they talk about gays in the Old Testament is kind of repulsive to me. because it's really low-minded. You know, for me to worry about what somebody's doing in their bedroom that doesn't have anything to do with me is just really nasty to me. I don't do such things. It's creepy. But anyway, I want to get off that subject because it's polluting me to even have to talk about it, but I had to get it off my chest, okay?
All right.
Because, like, they're really powerful reinforcements, even the negative ones, okay? It makes me happy to do myself. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, okay, don't hold it, like, against me that I'm a pagan, okay? A lot of people think pagans are freaking Satanists, and we're not all. Some of us are. But here's what the point I want to make about that is like paganism, but we used to all be pagans before. I mean, our ancestors were all pagans at one time until Christianity came along. And it was like the big tent that the Republicans talk about, the big tent. But paganism, ancient paganism was a big tent because everybody could be a pagan and have a good time doing it because you didn't talk about religion. You didn't worry about it. That was your private thing. That's what you did with yourself and your conscience. And it goes from, like, atheists, the end I'm at, and to all the way to pantheists, which is people who worship every god in the pantheon. Okay, well, I mean, that's
we have atheist pantheists who would dispute you on that point.
Well,
but I'm sure there are pantheists out there that believe the way you just said.
Well, I think it's like a continuum, okay? Atheist to pantheist and everything in between. But the key thing about it is the tolerance thing, okay? If somebody wants to believe that everything's God, that's okay as long as they don't try to make me believe that, okay?
Yeah. I got into trouble last week for asking some serious questions of a Wiccan that called in.
Yeah.
And the thing I want to make clear is, in my opinion, Christianity is not the enemy. But the problem, I mean, Christianity is just a symptom. The problem is superstition.
Yeah.
Okay? And I hold everybody to the same standards.
Right.
No matter who they are. So if somebody calls up and says, you know, I'm a non-Christian and I believe this or that magical thing that I can do, I'm going to ask for evidence, and if you can't give me any, I'm going to say you're full of it.
Well, have I ever talked about anything magical?
No, you haven't.
No,
you haven't. And I understand that there are, and I understand that there are forms of paganism that do not make appeals to supernatural things, and I have no problem with that. But then I have no problem with belief in even those things that do make appeals to magical things. It's just that when it comes up, I'm going to ask the pointed questions. So that's where I'm at.
But you can't ask them of me because I don't believe in magic. Okay.
Cool.
It's non-existent, but I just can't. If people do, it's really kind of harmless as when pagans do it.
I'm not convinced about that. We can have a show on that subject, and maybe we should. But
maybe it'll come to you later. But anyway,
this lady that was a Wiccan was a nurse. Okay, she's got the health of other people in her hands, and I don't want her thinking that burning some herbs is going to help their health.
Thanks for reminding me of that detail. You're right about that. Good point. Thank you. Well, anyway, if I think of anything else, I'll let you guys know.
Okay, Mary.
Bye.
You have a great week.
Call.
All right, you take care. And, let's try O'Neal here. O'Neal?
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. I've been listening to your shows a few times, and I've enjoyed hearing it. And
thank you.
Though I believe in God, but you don't, but that's fine with me. And I wanted to make a couple of comments that, although I've been enjoying the show for a few times, and I'm sorry that some jerks come out and try to say nasty things to you. It's really stupid of them. So I apologize. I mean, I didn't do it, but anyway.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Now, my point is this, that I've been wanting to hear more of your views and what your beliefs are. Like, you say you don't believe in God, but the basis for it is not really coming through to me. And I've been wanting to understand better what exactly it is.
Okay, great.
So over a period of time, I'm sure I'll get it.
That's a great question, and we have guests in today, so I'd like to get them involved in this. What the deal is, you'll get different. You ask 100 atheists that same question, you're going to get 100 different answers. Well, we got like 12 of them here, so let's see. Any specific question you'd like to know for sure right off the bat? I thought he was saying, what was your basis for being an atheist? Is
Yeah.
what I thought his first question was.
Yeah, let's get responses on that.
Amanda, you got the microphone?
This is like asking me, what is my basis for not bowing down to Mickey Mouse? This is like asking me, what is my basis for not wearing a pointed red hat? I don't have a basis. What is other people's basis for wanting me to do these things? I haven't been convinced by it.
That's a good question. David, anyone?
Well, it comes down to a very simple argument. Number one, to really do something, you should be able to prove it, to believe it, to show it. And the proof should be reproducible. God is a null argument. First cause is a null argument. After death is a null argument. If you really want to talk about what people believe, show me a reason for believing it, not just some probability. There's not even one record that shows Jesus Christ was here on earth. The guy they describe, the God on a stick they describe in the Bible. It's not one record. Why should I believe in him? I mean, I can barbecue meat all the time.
Anybody else?
O'Neill?
Yeah.
Any other questions you'd like to ask the group?
No, I'm enjoying hearing it, and I mean, I'll keep listening to it, and I'll get more of your views, and get other things, and so I just wanted to hear these things, and so I'm enjoying the show, but the point is not yet still come across to me.
Okay,
and
well,
I'll get it.
Okay. I'm glad to see you're trying, though, that you remain open-minded. So stay open-minded, and have a great week.
You too, thanks.
Yes, thank you, caller, yes.
What do you want to do? I got more news. We've done the 20, 30 commandments, however many there are. Okay.
All right, let's go on down to Tim.
Hey, guys.
Good morning, Tim.
Been a while since I called.
Hey, Tim.
Yes,
I bet you're all broken up that we didn't have like a nuclear war with Russia recently, right?
Well, that's why I'm calling.
Okay.
Well, it's one of the many things. Where do I start? As far as written records of Jesus, there's hundreds of eyewitnesses that wrote it down, and I guess they're all lying. Anywhere from Pontius, Pilate.
And who are these eyewitnesses?
Wait a minute.
Who are these eyewitnesses, Tim?
Well, the Gospels for the 12.
The Gospels are known to have been written at least 200 years after Jesus was supposed to have died.
No, John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the first four in the Bible, were written well after. John was written contemporarily.
No.
No,
that is false.
Like 50 years, in the same generation. Anyway, but that's not why I'm calling.
Do we have some
and I do agree with you that the Ten Commandments shouldn't be posted in schools. There should be one commandment posted in schools, and that's kids, shut up.
Okay.
That's interesting.
This is a real quick rundown for you.
Here we go.
Number one, the first written record that is supposedly refers to the mythical Jesus is Josephus. Josephus is an obvious Christian fraud that was perpetrated likely by Eusebius, who himself predicated lying to support his religion. So first of all, he disobeyed the Ten Commandments, and he was a high-order priest. Good religion. Then you have that record, which wasn't quoted by any of the other early church fathers, in spite of all the apologist arguments. Origen, none of them quoted it. There's not a single record from Philo or any first-century authors talking about any of the supposed miraculous events that occurred. The Gospels, the earliest papers, the little scraps that are left, are around 100 years after his death.
The Gospel of Mary Magdalene?
Tacitus is almost 100 years later. All the others are second-hand statements later.
The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, they're 90 to 100 years later, the earliest scraps of paper.
And aren't those not in the Bible?
They're not in the Bible. They should have been. A bunch of Catholics decided what goes in and what goes out.
But the point is that you cannot prove a mythology with myth information. You have to prove a mythology with other information from other sources.
You have to prove it exactly like we do in our own court of laws right here with eyewitness testimony.
And you don't have it.
Yeah,
they're dead.
Lots of it.
And actually, no, I don't quite agree with that, Tim, because our courts of laws have they have to find somebody they have to reach a decision about whether somebody's guilty or not, because our tax dollars are going into that, and we want there to be punishment, and there is all kinds of reasons why we have to decide, as expediently as possible, what the answer is going to be that we're going to reach. In science, which is what I think ought to be applied when somebody claims that some miraculous things were happening, in science, you don't have that immediate need to jump to some kind of answer.
That was my computer, by the way.
What?
I was wondering what that noise.
Ray was wondering what that big frog croaking was.
Okay. So in science, you do not look and see whether a lot of people kind of say that something is one way or the other, and then jump to a conclusion, like you do, unfortunately, in our courts of law, which have to reach conclusions. In science, you wait until there is hard evidence, and there ain't none.
Well, you can say that about evolution, too. You can't reproduce or verify anything in evolution.
As a matter of fact, let me just jump ahead to a...
Guys, that didn't even what I was called about, actually.
I didn't bring the news story. There was something on the CNN website. There are pharmaceutical companies are now using forced evolution, which is basically breeding. I mean, the same thing we've been doing for thousands and thousands of years with cattle and sheep and dogs.
That's natural selection. There's nothing to do with evolution.
Okay. The mosquito. What? Are you worried about speciation? Is that the issue?
Well, no. I'm just saying there's
What's your objection to the theory of evolution? Can you be specific?
Well, the theory of evolution relies heavily upon genetic radiation. Mutation to change species.
So?
You can't have species change from...
Wait a minute. It doesn't rely on radiation. You admitted this yourself. Once you had said that claim before, and we had a show on after you where John Kuntz was speaking about this, and then the show after that, you called in and you gave a hats off to us about doing a good job blowing your theory out of the water, and now you're bringing it up again.
Well, no, you did a good job of proving natural selection.
In any case,
it doesn't
matter. It doesn't matter where the changes come from. Okay, I mean, I won't even get into that with you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what causes the changes, because even if there is change in animals over time, and that change is filtered by natural selection, which it is, you've just agreed that there is natural selection.
Sure.
Then you get evolution.
All right.
The only thing that is missing from your point of view, the only thing you think is missing is you don't think that it goes so far that you get separate species.
Right.
But we have examples of that have happened in history. The mosquitoes in the British subway system
turned into elephants.
That got in, huh?
Turned into elephants.
Sure.
That got in 100 years ago, when every guy in Britain and his uncle was going around collecting every bug they could find. So they have a very complete record of all the insects that lived in Britain. These mosquitoes got into their subway system when they were digging it, and have been found now, after 100 years sealed up down there, that the mosquitoes in different branches of the subway have diverged.
What kind of animals are they now?
They're all mosquitoes,
Well,
but
we have more than one species.
But they can't interbreed. And
Well,
now
shut
all
up.
it takes is them to keep on changing, and you're going to get different insects.
I have sympathy for the mosquitoes.
Okay, and Amanda and
Well, I
David
have
had a
sympathy
point
for you,
too.
Tim.
Well, we have competing ideas. In one corner, we have an idea where we have all the pieces of the puzzle, and recently we finally fit in proof for at least one species, a new creature that can't interbreed with its ancestors. Okay, it still looks like a mosquito, it still smells and acts a lot like a mosquito, but it is different from the mosquito from which it came. What more do you want? We have not one single example of any god creating any one species.
The tough
and here
part
we
of
have
that
at
is,
least
though, let me
one.
make
What
one
is
point real
what is
quick.
the genetic
species.
mechanism, Tim? What is the genetic mechanism to stop the change over time that you admit happens, because you say that there is natural selection? What is the genetic mechanism that stops that from eventually changing the overall look and behavior of a species from one thing to another?
DNA structure. You have to have a mutated gene to change a species. But what's the
No,
difficulty
that
with
is
evolution
just wrong,
you have
and
to
you
go
don't
back-
have
you
any
to
idea
say
what you're
that
talking
an
about,
amino,
Tim.
A primordial amino acid has naturally selected into an elephant somehow. And that's just not possible.
You admit that there is natural selection.
Sure. I've
And
changed over time.
your explanation for why one species can't eventually, via natural selection, change to something
An amino
that
acid
looks distinctly different from what it used to be.
An amino acid naturally selecting into a complex organism?
Look, you say that amino acids naturally select so that we can do things like breed cattle to have more beef production, right? So you agree to that.
I don't agree.
Where is the line between that and, oh well, we can't, this cattle cannot eventually, after millions and millions and millions of generations, look like something that's different?
Okay.
You have no line.
I still haven't even got to what
I know, that's what I was getting ready to say, Tim.
Yeah, we got to move
We got
on.
a bunch of callers. Get to your point quickly. I'm sorry.
Nostradamus nailed it again.
Oh, no. Okay, tell us what he did this time.
King of Terror. 500-year-old guy predicted that a comet's going to appear in September. War will prevail happily before and after. So keep an eye after September, after the King of Terror flies over our heads.
We're getting a comet in September.
And that comet was just discovered in April, so it's not like he saw some cycle coming 500 years ago.
Tell you what, Tim, you know, if you had brought this to our attention before it was discovered, we would have said, darn, you're right, he nailed it.
But the only date Nostradamus wrote. The only date he put was September 99.
Excuse me?
The only date he ever wrote down, it's one of his most famous quatrains, September 1999.
I've read on the internet that same quatrain is being interpreted to be the Cassini probe that we sent up is making it cycle back around in that same time, and they're claiming that that's what he's talking about.
Well, he's talking about a bearded star. It's pretty obvious.
Tim?
A bearded star could only be a comet.
Tim,
okay, so what's this comet supposed to be telling us?
If people had jumped up and down and said, hey, you know, it's this comet that's going to happen on that date, that's what it means. If they had jumped up and down and said that before it was discovered...
I did.
No, you didn't, Tim. This is the first
that.
We've heard of it after the fact. What you're doing, once again, is going back, you and all the rest of the Nostradamus worshippers are going back and reading what he wrote and twisting it to fit what actually happens.
I promise I wouldn't lie to you. I've been predict. I told everybody.
I don't think you're lying, Tim. I just think you're confused.
Okay, here we have a question from David.
I have a simple question for you, Tim. If Nostradamus knew what was going to happen, why didn't he say it would be a comet on this date and this person would see it and it would happen? Or why didn't any one of the Bible people say that? All they say is, well, in general, maybe this will happen when this happens, if this happens, if that happens.
Okay, that's a good question. But Tim, tell us what this comet's supposed to foretell.
It's already foretold it. It's
No.
It's about war.
So we're getting this.
I mean, look for Korea and South Korea and North Korea to blow each other up. India, Pakistan.
I'm going to look for that regardless of whether you think that there has been this miraculous prediction of it.
Well, it was a 500.
Everybody on the planet is looking at those guys and saying, well, you know, their ships are shooting at each other. You know, well, so what is your point?
After the comet, it gets real bad. If you get a lot of big wars after that, it would be just another lucky guess from Nostradamus.
How much is a lot of big wars? You want to tell us exactly what the details are?
Of what?
Well,
if you can right now tell us precisely anything that's going to happen, okay? I don't mean a generalization of, oh, there's going to be lots of wars. That's not precise. Tell us precisely anything. Tell us this country is going to have a battle with that country at this town on this day. Give us something like that, and we'll think that you're maybe onto something. But you can't. After the fact, you're going to come back and say it was all predicted.
Precisely, exactly. 500 years ago, he said in September of 1999, the comet will show up.
And you didn't realize it or tell anybody about it, and neither did anybody else until after you found out that there was actually a comet.
But I swear to God, I've been...
All right, we have a question from Vic.
I bet you if Michael Jackson went on tour and had grown a beard, you'd say it was predicting him.
Okay. All right, Vic.
Ask my roommate. I swear, did I not? This is my roommate. Did I not say that a comet was coming in September? Alec, say yes.
All right, thank you. All right, Vic.
Another interpretation of Nostradamus says that the end of the world comes in August of 1999, so it won't be around here anyway to see any comet in September.
No end of the world. The Bible or Nostradamus, nobody predicts the end of the world. Nostradamus has prophecies going thousands of years past here.
Yeah, he does actually, but people like you who interpret Nostradamus have learned better than to predict ends of the world because it never happens.
It doesn't.
Because you're always
the Bible
completely
doesn't
full of
predict
it.
the end of the world.
All right, Tim, and I really appreciate your call because we got to go, but we'll be watching for this comment in September.
Okay, I'll come down and hang with you at the bagel factory someday.
Yeah, we'd like to meet you in person someday.
All right.
Take care. And it's the Hot Jumble Bagelery. It's not the Bagel Factory. I think there is a place.
Well, he could just consult Nostradamus, and Nostradamus will tell him where it is.
And Arlo had a point. I'm sorry. Arlo, you had a point?
Yes, well, about when I was around 14 years old, I used to love this Nostradamus stuff, you know. And one prophecy which I held to heart because it's really interesting was he predicted that in the end of the 1990s, 2/3 of the world's population would die off from a disease. And well, it's 1999.
Yeah.
Halfway through that, don't have much time left, so we're gonna see.
There was a great funny webpage on The Onion, which is a website that does like joke news stories, and the headline was "Millions and Millions Dead," and it was just talking about the fact that people die all the time. It was funny.
Did you have a point, Amanda? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So
let's go on down to Albert. Albert?
Yeah.
Good morning.
I wanted to say that I think that David over here that was talking,
yes,
he said that there's no proof that God walked the earth.
Yeah.
Now, see,
wait a minute. He said no proof that Jesus. Now, we also say that's a whole other statement. You're not telling me that
are
God
you a guy that thinks Jesus was God?
Well, now,
personally?
we're out here in TV land. We're catching this. See, that's what I caught.
But he actually said Jesus never walked here.
Okay, good.
And I believe that also.
And actually what he said was that there was no evidence, not that he didn't do it.
All right.
Okay, all right.
No
Now,
evidence.
David,
And David's right there. I'm talking for David, and he's standing right here.
What I actually said
okay,
was
David.
there was no historical basis.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying there wasn't a charismatic Jew that led people and got stuck on a stick. You just can't prove that Jew was the Jesus of the Gospels.
Okay, bear with
All
me.
right, go ahead, Albert. I'm sorry.
Okay, now, in about 1,000 years from now, we're going to say, well, did David ever walk the earth? Well, we know that he did because there's a video.
Right.
All right. Well, then back then, when I say God walked the earth, I mean there's the Bible, there's the books, there's the knowledge that something was driving the people to believe.
And the difference is that a book can be written by a guy going like this with a pen, and a video cannot be made by a guy going like this, easily making up stuff. Now, we're getting near to where we'll have the technology to simulate stuff that looks like real life. I mean, we've seen Jurassic Park. I mean, we're getting close to being able to make all this stuff seem like it's real on videotapes. And after that point, the videotapes themselves will no longer be sufficient evidence because we'll know how easy it is to fake stuff.
Okay,
anybody can write any words down that they want.
Okay, sir, Albert, go ahead.
What I was believing myself, though, is why religion was invented or brought up or put on the people, is because back in the old days we were eating each other and we were feeding each other to the lions, and everybody was dying horrible deaths because nobody had a belief.
Actually, a lot of people died horrible deaths because somebody had a belief, and the people that had the belief were the Jews, and they went into Israel and they slaughtered huge populations. It's in your Bible.
And it was also because of our lack of knowledge of pesticides and vaccines and everything else. And now that we understand disease better, it has nothing to do with religion.
Okay, let me
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is what I believe. This is the poor layman kind of guy that works out there. And, it's not really, caught up on... We're supposed to be over here watching the other channels with God.
Okay.
And now we're all watching y'all because y'all are bringing up what the hell we're doing.
Thank you.
But listen to me.
Glad to provide that service.
Well, anyway, you see, I'm a firm believer in the Spirit.
Okay.
And something drives me to love the other man.
Uh-huh.
Now, not believing anything would probably destroy me. Because see, like most of the guys out there right now with carrying knives and guns, have to believe something, just like the old days when the Christians or whoever was doing all this horrible mutilating of other people and eating them and killing them and this. Wait.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have a point, but go ahead.
Go ahead then. Go ahead.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is down the road, all you people in there in that room, I would like to know if maybe one of y'all could have some kind of a recorder on you or something like that would document your death. And if it's going to be a violent death, when somebody comes up and stabs you and gives you that quick enema in your brain, you're going to be going, "Oh God."
No,
I guarantee you. I guarantee you, I'll put my name on it.
And I really hate that you're so vain that you sit there and you think you know how I think and how I'm going to react onto a violent death. We get that call all the time. Now, the point I want to make is, can't you see how what an evolutionary advantage it is to love your fellow man? The people that loved their fellow man became more social, involved with their group, and their group got bigger and more and more. The people that did not love their fellow man, did not get along with them, were off wandering, trying to survive by themselves, wasn't mating with the other people or whatever, so that genetic trait has gone to the wayside. It is much more evolutionary advantage to be a loving, caring person than not.
Is evolution God? Is that what you're saying?
No.
How in the hell we know his definition of God now.
Yeah, we're mystified how you got that from his
Okay, well,
response.
try to bear with me here. I don't laugh at the atheists.
Okay.
So I don't think that y'all should find everything that we're trying to find ourselves.
Okay, but don't put words in our mouths, okay? I mean, what he said was he gave you an explanation, a completely physical, naturalistic explanation for why human beings have this thing called love for each other.
Right.
Okay? That's an explanation. It's not God. It answers your question.
Well, it's been fun. Let's do lunch.
All right, you have a great week.
Yeah, we had a great show last time where was it last week or the week before somebody brought up the no atheists in foxholes. It just isn't true, and we're not going to go through that all again.
I do appreciate our guest here. Does anybody want to comment on that? Because, like I said, we get that on the show all the time.
Yeah, David, do you want to talk about how you did not?
You know how I like to talk.
Don't let Vic talk now.
It's a clever tactic used by fundies to make all people who don't believe in the Christian religion look some kind of evil, or they have this. They're hateful, they're mean-spirited, and you can hear me. And they're prone to doing violence to other people. It's simply not true. It's just something they made up to make us look bad, to demonize us, so that you have a reason to bring you over into their faith.
All right, David had a point.
Because I'm going to leave and I'll pass to the others.
Okay.
Are you a veteran?
I am a 20-year veteran.
There you go.
I have...
Thank you for your service, yes. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, he's going to show us something.
If you have one of those, you can talk about veterans and foxholes. If you don't, shut up. End of conversation.
Now, the caller expressed an interest in knowing why he had the feeling of love for his fellow man, and that's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. But the only reason, caller, that you assume that it came from God is because you've been raised all your life to think that the only reason to love your fellow man is because God made you that way, or God told you to. And we are all examples that you can love your fellow man and not believe in any God, because we all do it.
And then David, yeah.
Thomas Paine wrote a book, and for that book he was vilified, attacked on every level. He was run out of the country, or he was run around the country. And when he died, he couldn't even die in peace. He had people bothering him to the time he finally had his last breath, because he said in that book that reason ruled. And his description is very clear of how people grow up as a society. It's beneficial not to rape, pillage, and plunder. It's beneficial to work with each other, and that's why they do it. If you don't like the book, it's available on the internet through a lot of different places.
All right. I appreciate you being here, David. Yes. And
boy, now it's all lit up.
All right. Let's. We're getting the names to the callers here shortly.
Sorry,
you taking off too, Michelle?
Oh yeah, right. You got people running off to the ethical.
Oh yeah, to the
ethical education classes.
Yeah, at the Red Lion.
By the way, for those Christians out there listening, the ethical education classes are our way of passing on good rules and principles of behavior to our children. We're interested in that too. We just don't justify it by saying there's a big guy in the sky.
All right, let's go back to Ty.
Hey.
Good morning, Ty.
I missed the first part of the show, and in the index of my Bible, there's only one set of 10 Commandments listed, and those are the ones in Exodus.
Where in Exodus?
Exodus 34.
Okay. Are you a Christian, sir?
I guess you'd call me undecided.
Have you read those 10 at Exodus 34?
No, well, see, I was flipping through the channels and I saw your show, so I ran upstairs to grab the Bible. And
those I'll just do a quick recap for you, okay? Don't worship other gods. Don't make molten images. Keep the feast of unleavened bread. Work 6 days but rest on the seventh. Observe the feast of weeks. 3 times a year, bring all your men children to appear before God. 7, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven. 8, don't sacrifice, the sacrifice of the Passover isn't to be left till the following morning. 9, the first fruits of your land you should bring to the house of the Lord. And 10, thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. Now, Do those sound to you like the ultimate rules of behavior and morality that ought to be posted in our schools?
No.
See,
That's our point.
You said there were 2 more sets?
The other set, one other set is in Exodus 20, and that's the one, that's the set that most Christians wave around, even though those are not the ones. It's interesting, your Bible doesn't identify those as the 10 Commandments. They are a first set. That's the set that was supposed to have been written by the finger of God, but Moses broke them when he came down the mountain and was mad to find everybody worshiping a golden calf.
Right.
The second set are the ones that are supposed to have been actually written out by Moses' hand, dictated by God just a few days later, and they're completely different.
Those are the ones in Exodus 34.
Yeah.
Is there a third set?
The third set is...
Yes, there is.
I got it marked here. I don't have quite as complete details on it, but it's in...
Look under Deuteronomy
Deuteronomy
5.
6, and it's not quite spelled out as clearly. I'm not sure whether it's entirely fair to call them a set of 10 commandments. There's certainly more commandments there. Some of them look the same as some of the other ones. And I should also point out that between the 2 sets in Exodus, there are chapters and chapters and chapters of more details about the laws. And interestingly enough, those extra details don't match up to either of the 2 sets, providing bookends to the section of all the details. So we're just mystified that people want to put the 10 Commandments in schools because we don't know which ones and we don't know why.
Maybe they ought to vote on it.
And what is that? What is that Bible you have there? What?
I've got a couple. I've gotten over the years. This is called let's see, the New Living Translation.
Huh.
Application Study Bible.
Interesting.
It's
Amanda,
the first one I grabbed.
And
somebody said that we shouldn't be laughing. Jeff has just told us that in the first set of 10 Commandments that God said, don't worship a graven image. He came down from the mountain and saw that his people were worshiping something that had been made out of old jewelry, melted down and cast. And the new version has one rule that's really similar to the last, but he could have just scratched out graven and then penciled in molten.
Yeah, it's interesting that
That's funny.
Mormonism is also based on a set of holy writings that were supposed to have been direct from God, but only the guy that talked to God was allowed to see them, and then they got destroyed, and so he wrote them down again by hand, which is like exactly the way Moses worked.
I have a friend who's Mormon. He said he was going to get me their book.
Yeah, that ought to be a fun read.
I have another quick question.
Sure.
A couple callers before, the guy was talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
Now, I've never really been able to figure out how there were people, a couple thousand years ago, running around with names like Matt and Mark.
I think we've just kept them around. I don't know what the details behind that. I mean, I know there are like Latin versions of those names.
So they've been changed.
They may have been. I don't know the details. Anybody know?
Probably. Well, that's about it. Thanks.
All right. You have a great week.
You too.
Thanks for calling. All right. Next on the list is Gary.
Hi. Huh? No. Gary.
Good morning, Gary.
Yeah. Good morning. How y'all doing?
Fantastic.
Well, actually, I've only got a quick point. Because I'm not going to go anything I'm not educated on, but I do know of a document that's kept in the Museum of England that is supposedly written by Pontius Pilate, who did not agree with Jesus at the time that he put him to death. You know the story, right?
Yeah, but I don't know there's any document that was written.
Okay, well that's cool. You can go to the Museum of England and check it out yourself. Cause
That's a new one.
We're not going to go to England, but I have heard of that. I've heard of that document, sir. I've heard of that document, and I'm going to make a note here and bring in what information we have about it.
Please do, because I've never seen it physically myself, but I heard a speaker
fill us in, yes.
Talking about it, and he actually wasn't a Christian either until he found a few documents. He was people, I guess, somewhat on your path also, as far as trying to find credible sources. And this is the best source I've ever heard of. It actually makes me question a lot of things. But Pontius Pilate wrote to his superiors, I guess that was Caesar. I can't remember actually, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But him and I think 300 of his God, what are they called? Not employees, but the people in his court or whatever.
Right.
Were supposedly witnessed Jesus come back in a physical body and talk to him himself, and actually Pontius Pilate became a follower of Christ after that, and he wrote a letter to his superior saying, "Hey, this is what's going on. Here's the witnesses. Here's people who witnessed Jesus."
Yeah.
And by the way, here's a heads up on what's going on, and I resign. By the way, I'm out of here. And the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church took a lot of this stuff out and actually didn't even keep a record of it because, well, also Pontius Pilate was also said to be a black man. So there's many reasons. I mean, the Catholic, you can't confuse religion with spirituality. All right, religion is just another man tool to keep people under their thumb and manipulated.
And spirituality is what?
Huh?
And what is spirituality then?
Well, like you said, your emotions, your heart, your
Well,
your compassion
we've got
toward
all
humans.
that without
It doesn't have to
attributing
be
it to
anything
any
special. But
sky
I mean,
gods.
I don't care if you call it God or you call it Buddha or whatever, man. As long as you have that, you're human. And I know people who aren't, in my opinion, human. So.
Really?
Just call as far as compassionate and heartful.
Are you calling us non-human?
I didn't say that. I didn't say you were not compassionate.
He seems like a reasonable guy.
Spirituality is emotions and your heartfelt compassion toward any other person or object.
We just try to stay away from that word spirituality for the stuff that you just said it was, because there are already perfectly good words for that don't imply the existence of some supernatural something that we have no evidence of.
Okay, well, that's
Go ahead.
cool.
Do you have a question or comment?
No, actually, I was just trying to let y'all know about the document I've heard about. And
We'll look that up.
Yes.
My initial reaction is, if there is this clear and obvious proof that it's all true in England, explain to me how come practically everybody, or the vast majority of people in England are agnostics.
Well, come on, the king made a religion against the Catholics just
They
because
got
he wanted
this thing
to
right in
divorce
their
his
museum.
wife.
If it's that obviously true, then all those people are idiots.
Let me paraphrase what you're saying. That's basically the resignation letter of Pontius Pilate.
Yeah, to what I've been.
We'll look it up.
To Julius
Watch
Caesar.
next week.
I don't think it was actually Julius Caesar, but they called the ruler of the time Caesar.
And Amanda had a point.
Remember that there's a strong tradition, especially in medieval England, of passing off artifacts. We have the finger bones of many saints and martyrs that never existed. We have
Again,
pieces
that's
of
Catholic,
the real
though. Catholics
cross,
are
pieces
crazy.
of the Ark, pieces of the stone tablets. And I'm not surprised that you would find such a thing that's purported to be from Pilate in England. Take a look at the date when the closest thing to a Pontius Pilate in history exists, and compare the birth date of Pontius Pilate and the death date of Pontius Pilate to when the historical Jesus was alleged to have existed. I think they're like 90 years apart between the birth of one and the death of the other.
But we'll look into it. We will definitely look into
Yeah,
it
that's-
and talk about it next week.
All right, thanks for your call. You have a great week. Yeah, that would be quite interesting. I'm curious if
I'm sure I've heard references to that.
That
I'll find
Demas?
something.
Demas.
Yeah.
Demas?
Hello?
your
Am I
name?
pronouncing your name correctly?
I'm not Demas. I'm Bill.
Bill.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
You spelled Bill wrong again.
Sorry about that, Bill.
People have confused my last name, but never my first name, so that's a new one.
That's an odd spelling for Bill, yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I wanted to make a comment about that guy who was talking all about Nostradamus.
Yeah.
And how great his prophecies were.
Yeah.
If he's still listening, I want him to go out and get a book called Nostradamus Unmasked by James Randi.
James Randi.
Very excellent, because he goes into a very good explanation of how Nostradamus grew up, the environment he grew up in, and also all his failures. People don't realize that he had an awful lot of failed prophecies.
Good point.
A ton of them. And every once in a while, he'd just get right on something. And it's very easy to say that he got right by accident.
Right.
The other thing I want to mention about September 1999 and the Great War, for most of this century, there has been wars happening somewhere that could have escalated at any point. And it's not very difficult to imagine that some idiot in North Korea or some idiot in Yugoslavia or some idiot somewhere might see this quote-unquote prophecy about September 99 and decide, I'm going to make myself look credible by escalating a war.
In fact, we've already had those idiots arrested in Israel who were planning to perform acts of violence in the streets in order to try to spark the Armageddon.
Right.
Okay.
And so therefore it's not a prophecy.
You're not making that up. That's
Yes.
real.
So therefore, Nostradamus wasn't a prophecy because, people are, it's very easy to take advantage of that. Hitler did the same thing, right? I mean, his original name wasn't Hitler. He changed it to Hitler, and people use Nostradamus, as the prophecy of Hister to say, he prophesied Hitler. It's like, no, Hitler took the name to make himself look more credible.
Exactly. That came up on the show before.
Yep. So that was my comment, and hopefully that guy's still listening, and hopefully he'll read that book.
Thank you.
Yep.
You have a great week.
You too.
All right, let's go on down to Keith. Keith.
Hi, I had a further comment about the Ten Commandments in school.
Okay.
Yes, we'd like to hear that.
In addition, of course, to the blatant unconstitutionality, there's the practical reason of having to explain to kids what adultery is. Strikes me as a very bad thing.
That's an interesting point.
I mean, if I've got a kindergartner or a first grader in school,
yeah,
I don't really want them learning and understanding what adultery is at that age.
Yeah. Good point.
That's all I had to say.
And since you brought it up, there's some Catholic religions that once you're married, that's it. If you get divorced or widowed and remarry, you actually have to go through the church to get the first one annulled and all this, so you're not committing adultery. So it all depends on how literal of a sense of the word adultery that you really want to define.
One thing that's interesting is
you have a great week. I think. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Did you have another comment? Arlo had a comment there. Go ahead, Arlo. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention that Jesus himself in the New Testament says that it is a terrible sin to marry a woman who has been divorced. And it's amazing, I mean, there's a 50% divorce rate, and, many of those are Christians, and they are remarrying.
Yes. All right. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, that's pretty much everything.
I appreciate
Can I do some more news to try to get it all in? Because
we're going to try to get some more of this news in here,
Yeah,
folks.
we'll get to the other callers in a minute.
Please hang with us.
Okay, I'm going to skip this one. The story about the KLA rebels accused of vandalizing a Serb monastery. Just yet another example of the wonderful way that religion helps people get along. And for those of you who don't know this, we have had a cloned human embryo. It was revealed by a corporation, the name of which I didn't write down, but this was in the news that these people want to clone people's own tissues in order to get what are called stem cells, because stem cells can develop into any kind of cells, and it's easy to get them from like a recently fertilized egg. Thank you. So anyway, they made this. They had no intention of making a baby. They destroyed it after 12 days, and that's going on. So deal with it out there. What the heck is happening? Oh, it's my clone! It's growing up my shoulder. Chimps are cultured creatures. Chimpanzees have been shown. Thank you. Chimpanzees have been shown for the first time to have a culture as rich as humans. This discovery shows that our closest animal cousins are even more like us than we thought. A major study involving 7 chimpanzee sites across equatorial Africa and an international team of researchers pooled a total of 151 years of chimpanzee observations. It revealed remarkable differences in the behavior of the chimpanzees in different groups. For example, each had their own distinct ways of grooming, gathering ants, probing beehives for honey, cracking nuts, and making threats. These are passed down from one generation to the next. A biological definition of culture is the ability to pass on behavior through social learning as well as through genes, so in that sense, chimps now join humans as the only cultured beings on Earth. Chimp communities differ from each other not only in just one behavior, but in a whole suite of patterns, said the team leader, Professor Andrew Whiten of St. Andrews University in Scotland. Franz de Waal at the Yerkes Regional Primate Research Center in Atlanta, in the United States, believes the chimpanzees deserve their place as cultured creatures. Quote, "The evidence is now overwhelming that chimpanzees have a remarkable ability to invent new customs and technologies, and that they pass these on socially rather than genetically," he says, writing in the journal Nature. Professor Whiten believes the findings emphasize the continuity of human nature and the rest of the natural world.
Fantastic.
Wiccans hold tolerance ritual. Now, I got into trouble last week on Wiccans, and I intend to do it again. Witches burning herbs in a black... This is from a newspaper, I think the Statesman. Witches burning herbs in a black cast iron cauldron may seem like something out of folklore, but on Friday night, a group of Wiccans did just that in a ritual to promote tolerance for their unconventional religion. "What's the magic for tonight?" High Priestess Tama Oringdorf asked the 16 witches assembled on a farm near Fort Hood. "Tolerance and understanding," the Wiccans replied in unison. Oringdorf, a leader of the Sacred Well congregation in San Antonio, said the smoke from parsley for cleansing negative words said about them, sage and rosemary to create insightful and loving dialogue in the heart, and fennel to soothe the stomach from the pain of destructive deeds held the energy of tolerance. The ritual was an effort to counter intolerance from religious conservatives who are trying to ban their faith from the military. Quote, "We thought we needed to do something," said High Priest David Orringdorf, who founded the sacred well. They thought they needed to do something, and so they burned some herbs and chanted. Yeah, that ought to help. Not only does it make no kind of sense and have no basis in reality that this magical ritual is going to change anybody's opinions, but merely performing the ritual and saying that it's going to change people's opinions is demonstrating exactly the kind of behavior that has freaked out the religious conservatives. The witches said they hope the ritual, the equivalent of a prayer service, helps bring a change of heart to U.S. Representative Bob Barr, Republican from Georgia, and the Washington-based Free Congress Foundation that is leading the charge for the Army boycott. Now, I propose a test. If those guys can prove their magical powers by getting Bob Barr to back down and say it was all a big misunderstanding, then I'll admit they may have some magical powers. But if not, and Bob Barr goes right on being an intolerant fundamentalist creep, then how about you guys swallow a great big dose of reality and stop making fools of yourselves? Bill Murray of the Religious Freedom Coalition in Washington, one of the groups supporting the boycott, said there must be limits on the conduct of people in the military. Quote, "Wicca, unlike Christianity and Judaism, prescribes no personal limits on behavior. It teaches that each individual must determine his patterns of behavior and may use the gods of Wicca to obtain any personal goal," Murray said. An army based on Wicca would be willing to do anything. Now, this, of course, is utter nonsense. Christians excuse their way around their own 10 Commandments, or at least whichever ones they think are the real 10 Commandments, all the time. The idea that many Christians actually live by strict rules of behavior is simply not true. Besides, don't we want our military to be willing to do anything? Or does Mr. Murray think it would be a good idea if soldiers actually followed a strict commandment not to kill?
Good one.
It's just, it is such a cornucopia of stuff to talk about when Christians and Wiccans beat each other up in the press.
All right, we're running low on time here, so let's try to get as many as we can here. Lewis?
Yes.
All right, quickly, we're running out of time. We got
Okay, I want to talk just briefly about the history of the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
Sure.
First of all,
Which ones?
After doing a lot of reading and research, it's my belief that the folks that adopted the, quote, original 10 Commandments borrowed those from a gentleman by the name of Hammurabi,
right?
Which ran a city, I guess a Semitic city, approximately 1,500 years before Moses came down off the mount with the, quote, 10 Commandments.
Right.
True.
So, I guess you know what, you know, if you were going to become a Christian, or if I were going to become a Christian, one of the things I would examine is the litmus test, which is the truth and reality.
Yeah.
The reality is that those 10 Commandments were around for a long time before Moses.
Well, in fact, Hammurabi didn't just have 10. Hammurabi had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rules spelled out in immense detail, covering all kinds of different special cases. And to the credit of the Jews that wrote Exodus, between two of their sets of 10 Commandments, there's a section that spells out a lot of their rules that don't exactly match up with either of the set of 10 Commandments, but whatever. They go on at some great length and talk about special cases, and that's nice, but they don't go anywhere near into the detail that Hammurabi did.
Right. And then the other comment I want to make is that with regard to, and I'm just going to pick on one of the commandments, which is "Thou shalt not kill."
Right.
It's interesting that Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike, which are all descendants of these particular realities, this type of this faith, believing this monotheistic faith. It's interesting that all of those cultures under those religions have probably killed more people throughout history than any other culture, and I guess I want to end what I have to say with that thought.
Yeah, you're right.
Excellent point.
Which is why they try to justify themselves by saying that, oh, that word ought to be interpreted murder, but
There's no difference whether if it's state-sanctioned murder, like putting someone in an electric chair or whatever.
They think they have a case if they change
thing.
the word. If they change the translation, but.
You have a great week, and I do appreciate your call.
You bet. Bye.
Biblical scholars agree that the word should not be reinterpreted to mean murder.
All right, and I want to make sure all our guests get in here. Go right ahead there.
All right, my name's Tim. I just want to comment on what he was talking about. The Jews are the masters of assimilation, and if we recognize that, not only did they have the Egyptians' captivity, but before, in the prehistory, they also had the Babylonian captivity before any of the books of Moses were written. And if you and the scholars, the theologians have actually looked at the Bible and the two creation stories that are contained in Genesis. One of the creation stories actually comes from the Babylonian captivity. And I just want to make a point that it's not only the Ten Commandments or their code of conduct, but it's also their whole half of their creation story, because there's two conflicting creation stories comes from Babylon as
Excellent point. And then I want to welcome Arlo out here.
Thanks. I thought
Arlo's, you've heard his voice several times during today's show.
I'm still only hearing his voice.
There he
is.
is.
The seats were getting pretty empty back here, so I just sort of appeared. So
I appreciate
a bunch of people had to move on to their class.
All right, let's try one. Robert?
Good morning. It's Anglican Boy with some helpful information to help disillusion my fundamentalist comic relief counterparts. About the, of course, I wish I had time to go into more detail about the literary traditions that produced the Gospels through a series of building on to core proclamations called the Kerygma, creating what we call today the Synoptic tradition, which employed, among many other literary techniques, a process called vaticinia ad eventu, which means prophecy after the fact. Looking back into what are the Hebrew scriptures and constructing a biography, in quote, biography, unquote, of the life of Jesus of Nazareth, but about the resignation letter of Pontius Pilate. During the first few hundred years of Christianity, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of letters written and circulated all across the Aegean Rim. And there's a wonderful book called The Lost Gospels with a beautiful foreword in it by the Archbishop of Canterbury. Among the books collected in this book called The Lost Gospels is that resignation letter of Pontius Pilate. And, of course, it doesn't have any credibility whatsoever. It is not an Orthodox book that has ever received any serious recognition by scholars for its credibility or legitimacy. What is particularly striking about the letter of Pontius Pilate is as you read the letter, it goes through and it has kind of a synchronistic revenge theme to it, where various characters in the Gospels who either betrayed or were opposed to Jesus of Nazareth or John the Baptist suffer some kind of malevolent end or some kind of miserable death that oftentimes reflected their own actions. For example, the daughter of, I think it's Salome or Salome, who's the one that demanded John the Baptist's head on a platter. She has a terrible fall later in life that severs her head, and her head then is presented on a platter. And so these events, of course, being written after the Synoptic tradition, after the Gospels were established, and stories were interpolated into them, it would not be likely then that Pontius Pilate, in his own lifetime, writing this, would have any knowledge of these stories that were later constructed and sewn together in the Synoptic tradition, forming the Gospels, which came about 300 to 400 years later. So there is nothing to the resignation letter of Pontius Pilate whatsoever. And good luck to all of you. And once again, God bless every one of you. Take care. Bye.
All righty.
All right, let's quickly go to Al. We're running out of time.
Listen, I know I got a few minutes, but the word Holy Bible in Hebrew means the Holy Truth. And you can change it any way you want to. God gave us that freedom. He created the commandments. We're all descendants of one father, which is Noah. Okay? And now you can change it any way you want to. The Ten Commandments he gave us.
How are we changing it?
Okay, but what I'm saying is the Ten Commandments were written.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why they put these 10 Commandments in school that way is because nobody will get up and tell the people the truth.
Wait, which 10 Commandments?
The ones you read off just a few minutes ago.
I've read 20 so far.
You know, it is written.
I could read another 10 if you're really
There are
wanting to.
613. There are 613 laws.
Yeah.
There are 360-something positive laws and 240-something negative laws. Now, Christ came to bring confirmation that the old was the truth, the commandments of God. It is also written that Christ came only for the house of Israel. They didn't want to give what is precious and holy to the Gentiles because they would demolish it. Sure. This religion is just as confusing to God as it is to mankind. And let me tell you something else. In the book of Revelations, if you read the book of Revelations, he says, my people, if they abide by my commandments and keep the faith of Christ, they'll be able to survive in this world. Now, we have the freedom, we have a free will to change it, do whatever we want, but there is a time where we will pay for our actions. We will be accounted for. Now, another thing that I want to mention to you is that, okay, am I making it too long? I'm sorry. I don't want to bore
we'd
you.
like to respond to each and every one of your points, but you keep going on, so.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just have so much to tell you.
Well, please call back next week.
It's not like we haven't heard all this stuff before. We are unconvinced because there's not a shred of compelling evidence to make us believe any of that.
Okay, let's try one more caller.
Blanket disclaimer.
Jackie?
Yes.
You're the last call.
Yes, I'm interested to know what are the benefits of being an atheist.
The benefits?
Right.
You don't believe anything that there isn't a good reason to believe.
You don't carry along all the baggage of bigotry and persecution that the Christian religion or any religion. There's very few religions that don't have the history involved there. So that's just a couple quick things off the top of my head. Oh, and we have atheists here in the audience, please. Amanda?
I'd like to say that one of the benefits is the religious perspective. When you base your culture on religion is follow rules. We don't give young people any kind of way to prioritize them. We just say, here they are. And we come from a very, very ancient human tradition of if somebody does something bad, punish them. The Code of Hammurabi is also called the Lex Talionis, which means the law of retribution, an eye for an eye. The 10 Commandments throws out the angle of retribution and just says, here's the way you will live. And listening to the 10 Commandments as spoken, the one that says, thou shalt not kill, doesn't have any kind of a basis, doesn't say why you should do these things. So when you come from a religious background, you don't have any way to deal with new situations. What are we going to do when people are cloning each other? What are we going to do when people come up with diseases that only affect one nation and not another? These choices that are to be made need to be made by people with a background in reason, not a background in, here's something that was told to you, you don't understand it, do as it says. I don't think that's the way we should teach children.
All right, Jackie.
Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah,
that's one angle.
But what purpose do atheists have to make the world a better place to live?
Do we need a purpose other than that one?
Well,
a lot of us believe humans want to be this way, and we refuse to be told that it has to come from God or has to come from religion. And we are telling each other right now, be excellent to each other. Bill and Ted said it. Do they need to be real?
All right, okay, go ahead. Oh, okay.
We're done. Any other comments?
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please call again.
Uh-huh.
Remind everyone we're heading down to the Hot Jumble Bakery, which is down West 5th and Lavaca as soon as we head out of here. I want to thank my guest, Atheist Community of Austin, right here. You'll see the kids and everybody left go to the ethical classes that is going on. It's the reason they had to leave. But I was wondering what was going on here. Yes, the talking head.
Gray's head appear in the sky. And
we love you, Austin. We love everyone there in Austin.
We love the Christians and the Wiccans. We love all you people. We just wish you'd stop being so nuts.
Just examine your religion. Examine it. If anybody tells you to take it on faith, that means they don't have a proof or they're lying to you.
They don't want you to think.
Examine.
Yes, the crew. There's Arlo, our sound guy. Yes, Keith, Arlo, Misty. Oh, we still got Misty's name up there. Yes, yeah. Yeah, she's not here today. Yeah. There we go. Boom. We're done.
That was a good show.